Okay, we will welcome Director Bland with MTA to begin our next budget hearing. And you can do your introductions, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also joining me at the head table is Ed Oliphant, our Chief Financial Officer. So I'll do the broad strokes, and Ed will handle all the tough questions. As Madam Chair indicated, my name's Steve Bland, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Metropolitan Transit Authority. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this evening on our budget allocation for 2017-2018. On a daily basis, MTA carries approximately 33,000 passenger trips, with well over half of these trips beginning or ending at a place of work. During the school year, on an average weekday, 5,000 Metro Nashville public school students use the MTA network to get to and from school, but thanks to the unique partnership among the district, MTA, and Metro Nashville, they do much more than that. With universal access to the system, they're able to access extracurricular activities, part-time jobs, and all the activities that make Nashville so attractive. The budget proposed by Mayor Berry makes good on her commitment to take major steps to expand the range of mobility options available to all Nashvillians. If approved by this council, it would represent the single largest one-year increase in Metro funding for MTA in its history. For operations, this would include funding to allow the MTA to reinstate free transfers for all users among all routes. So passengers boarding one bus would be able to request a free transfer and would be able to access any other bus in the system within 2 hours. To continue to encourage people to use non-cash media, such as passes and tickets, we would also proportionally discount these products. We would be extending the current Music City routes to serve portions of North Nashville in the Jefferson Street corridor, terminating at Tennessee State University. This would essentially replace the 29 Jefferson bus. With the service hours saved in this allocation, we would be adding service to the Route 19 Herman bus and extending it into the Nations neighborhood. And we would also be improving service frequency on the number 22 Bordeaux bus in North Nashville, which is currently our highest productivity bus route, and it would bring it up to frequencies consistent with what we have in the Gallatin Road and Murfreesboro corridors. We would also be adding some trips to our Route 18 airport local service as we're seeing increasing demand in the Elm Hill Pike corridor. And it would continue to expand the capacity of our Access Ride program for senior citizens and persons with disabilities, but it would also enable us to kick off proposed mobility on demand projects where we could expand the reach of Access Ride into neighborhood circulation across town and potentially after-hours services. With respect to the proposed capital budget allocations, first of all, and probably most important, it would allow us to fully match all available federal and state grant fund resources for capital. We'd be able to replace over 30 buses and access ride vans with clean energy hybrid electric diesel equipment. It would complete the funding of our new fare collection system, allowing both mobile payment and a fully integrated open smart card system. And we appreciate the partnership with Metro IT in making sure that it can be fully integrated with the other activities that Metro is doing in the payment realm. Would support the creation of neighborhood hubs in both the North Nashville and Green Hills areas, and would also advance, as was sort of the hallmark of Mayor Berry's State of Metro message, would also advance design and preliminary planning of high-capacity transit corridors as enumerated in the N-Motion plan. Recognizing that additional resources of this magnitude demand a justification of the efficiency with which current resources are currently spent, pleased to report that during our current year, our cost per hour of service actually went down compared to prior years, and if funded in the full allocation, the fiscal 18 cost per hour of service would go down below the current spending level per hour of service. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to entertain questions and discussion.
Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Chair. Well, my questions won't be popular, but let's go ahead and start talking about them. You saw the Nashville Business Journal, I'm sure, today. And James Moore, who's the Director of Transportation of Engineering with the University of Southern California, is arguing on the light rail issue, saying that cities are pouring their money into that when the bus rapid transit is probably a much wiser investment. Not necessarily that you go into that, but it gives me a little bit of heartburn when I see a 6.5% increase for here, and we're not increasing our fire in the same capacity, and there's some other things we're not doing. And especially when I look at, the actual dollars we collect, I guess in charges, commission, and revenues, it's down $3 million anticipated from where it was last year, or what you're anticipating it to be this coming year, excuse me. And so I think the thing that concerns me the most is we're looking at spending billions of dollars, and how comfortable are we that we have the right solution? Because I think the headline in there, it says today, expert, if Nashville builds light rail, city could hover at edge of bankruptcy forever. And I can't help it. It's a major concern because we already owe billions of dollars, not $1 billion, but almost $3 billion in general obligation funds. And so it is of great concern to me. And the cost per hour might be great, that it's going down, but the cost to taxpayers continues to go up. So I don't know what your thoughts on that are. I just wish that we could find a way that there's a little more equity involved to where we could recoup some more of the revenues that we're spending, especially when we got other departments that we're not able to fund at the same level that we're funding you guys at.
Sure. Well, I'll try to interpret a question out of it. I think I get the gist. First of all, in terms of light rail, or what I would call the heavy capital investments, generally what you're seeing around the country with the cities that are doing it, they are seeing return on those investments in the form of economic development and a huge amount of growth around those station sites and around those corridors. So I would actually be the first to agree with the point that if you're doing something like light rail or commuter rail or any of the what I'll call the heavy capital modes, if you're only doing it for the transportation benefit, is probably not money well spent. I would also agree with the author's take that bus rapid transit is a terrific alternative, and the N-Motion plan is kind of filled with bus rapid transit corridors. In fact, actually, the decision point on the corridors that were identified for potential light rail investments were those corridors that were most likely to generate significant economic redevelopment along the lines. In terms of the metrics, I heard the chief's presentation, and I want a robust fire department and quick response times as much or more than anyone. But Nashville is actually, and to the credit of Mayor Barry and to the credit of Mayor Dean before her, we have a lot of catching up to do. I mean, we are still well below what spending, per capita spend and per capita hours of service are in other, even similar cities. I'm not talking about the Chicagos, the Bostons, New York, but I'm talking about the Charlottes and the Dallases and what have you. So I certainly understand the concern. I think that both the article and the debate on this is absolutely appropriate. I think we're going to have a lot more of it. And the more information we get out, frankly, the better. And the more debate and discussion we get, the better.
I think, let me summarize a question. How do I justify it to my constituents in my district, in the 12th district in Hermitage, that really has limited? Now we do have the Music City Star. There's the one place there that has a drop off and where the buses come to, but very, very limited as far as sidewalk capacity in order for people to actually utilize this. How do I justify saying, oh, we're going to spend 6.5% more there, and we can't get the fire department, we can't get the public safety issues? That's where my challenge comes. Sure. Because I mean, my folks, they don't understand it. And frankly, I don't know that I necessarily understand it as well. And as I said, it wasn't going to be popular, my questioning, but I think it's something that has to be on the table to talk about if we're all going to be contributing to this.
So, and I agree with you, and I frankly appreciate the questioning, because the more different opinions and different perspectives we get, the more information exchange we can have. With respect to areas of the county that aren't, say, directly along what might be a targeted light rail or high capacity line, one of the things we're most excited about, and I know that Councilman Swope and I have had a significant number of conversations, is what I'll refer to as the mobility on demand services. So how do we in frankly a relatively low-cost manner, whether it's using our existing access ride system or it's using private sector resources, ultimately autonomous vehicles, open up those mobility options so that it is easier for all Nashvillians to get around. And the issue with growth in our community in those corridors, the N-Motion plan from which a lot of these projects sort of derived, followed directly on the heels of the Nashville Next comprehensive plan. And it was in that plan that specific corridors were identified for higher density development, so that if we are to grow, at the rates that we're currently growing and the rates that we're projected to grow, frankly, doing mobility in the same way we've historically done it just isn't going to work. So it's a terrific debate. And again, the mayor was very clear in saying we're going to target going for specific funding sources for this because, frankly, I don't want to be in a position where we're competing against the police department or the fire department or the health department or metro schools. That cities that have done this and done it successfully have kind of carved out a unique way or a separate way to pay for these investments. And I don't think if they weren't seeing economic return on investment, they wouldn't keep going back and frankly doing more of it, as most of them have.
Well, I'll look forward to that. Thank you, Chair.
Councilman Pulley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. I think you touched on one, and that's the issue with respect to the corridors. And I believe one of the driving forces behind the selection of Gallatin Pike was the prospects for some pretty intense development on that corridor, which enables it to make a lot more economic sense than simply from the transportation angle. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with it, frankly, in the 4 corridor, and really in the 5 when you include the heavy bus rapid transit corridor. And in fact, to illustrate that point, not that I'm the person they should be calling, but probably within 2 weeks of the mayor's State of Metro address, I had 4 developers call me asking me where they should be buying real estate on Gallatin Road and Gallatin Pike. I told them they should be calling Jim Harbison. That wasn't really my line of work.
That was a good answer. So what is the current operating capacity of your bus lines now?
In terms of passenger capacity?
Yes.
That's a good question. I know we get the question, I won't say often, but fairly regularly, of what % capacity are you? And when you factor in seated capacity, so in other words, if every seat on every bus in our system were full all the time, that's 100%. We're at about 22% capacity. So, which is not, you would not want to be at 100% capacity. That, frankly, would mean we're leaving people standing at the curb.
That doesn't that represent a bit of an increase? Because it seems like when we had this discussion a year and a half or so ago, it was right at 15%, as I recall.
It's been actually pretty level. In fact, actually, overall, we've had a bit of a ridership dip over the last 2 years, about 2%, 2.5%. So some of that's factoring to adjusting fleet size, bus size on certain routes. So it may frankly be, I don't actually recall the number from 2 years ago, but it may reflect a reduced seat capacity on some lines.
And we've approved some developments that are on those corridors, specifically in my district on Hillsborough Pike. There's a fairly large residential development going on in the southern end of that area. And there likely will be more development on that and other corridors. Would you expect those developments continue to go online with actual residents, your operating capacity to significantly increase with respect to that?
Yeah, corridor by corridor. So one of the things we identified in the in-motion plan that was central to our budget request of Metro that was partially funded for this year is the development of a high-frequency transit network. And it's 14 routes in our current system out of 46 total carry about 70% of our ridership. So the Hillsborough Pike corridor is a good example. The 7 route that runs through there is one of our heavier use routes. And the idea behind the frequent transit network is those real, heavy carrying routes are what we're working toward into that every 10 or 15-minute frequency, extending service hours. So it's kind of a roundabout way of saying to your question, in Hillsborough and a number of other corridors, we would expect over time to be building up more capacity as that demand grows. I hope does that address your question?
Somewhat. I mean, in theory, a lot of what we are hearing is that the kind of people who want to live in these developments on the corridor, one of the driving forces is public transportation. So if that theory holds true, then I would expect it to positively impact your occupancy and would positively impact developments like the light rail on Gallatin Pike.
No, I would agree with that, and there are a lot of pieces that work together, and you and I've had this conversation that we're tied at the hip with entities like Metro Planning, MDHA, and Public Works, because it's all related to, well, what are we doing with affordable housing or workforce housing? What are we doing with sidewalk access to make the high-capacity corridors work, be it light rail, bus rapid transit, or even a frequent transit network with traditional bus service? The better walkability we have, and that's just not getting to bus stops and stations, it's crossing some of these major corridors, which is a real challenge for folks now, then that becomes much more possible. And the idea that, well, if I can walk around Green Hills and those types of developments, get a lot of my errands done on foot, and access the transit system to take the longer trips, then all of a sudden that's when you start to see those mode shares kind of move. We're never going to move away from the single occupant auto, but at least it starts to balance that load a little bit.
Sounds like a good argument for putting some of these Green Hill sidewalks in your budget next year, Mr. Bland. So,
well, the one thing in that area that we are real excited about is we're moving forward with a school district on planning for one of our neighborhood centers in conjunction with the Hillsborough High School renovation.
Real pleased about that.
And they've been excited about it, and frankly, it would really enable us to do some pretty neat service things down there.
We appreciate that. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions, just trying to make sure I understood everything. Ridership has actually fallen a little bit over the last couple of years, and is that reflected then in your program revenue also falling from 15.9 to projected 12.8?
Well, the major factor in that projection is actually the this initiative to reinstate free transfers. So right now, if you get on the Hillsborough bus and you ride into downtown Nashville and you transfer to the Gallatin bus, you pay twice. So you pay $1.70 on both. What this would do is enable you to get that free transfer, and as long as you board within 2 hours, you ride for free. So the bulk of that is, is in that particular, and that prorated reduction in passes
and tickets. Is in that missing revenue. But otherwise, ridership is
about 2%, 2.5% down, and there's kind of a mix of causes for that. When we look at the detailed data, it's probably like any other business. It looks like this, but it's really doing this all over the place. So what we're seeing is access ride is up. It continues to go up in demand and has pretty much every year. What we're seeing is some increases.
Access ride, is that handicapped ride?
Yeah, the door-to-door service
special
for senior
vans,
citizens, correct.
Which are, okay.
Other areas where we're seeing increases are in the services where we've done significant improvements in frequency, like the Nolensville and Charlotte corridors over the last couple of years. Youth ridership continues to increase with the STRIDE program, and frankly, both school and non-school related, we're holding about 70% of our student ridership in the summer months when school isn't in session. I mentioned enhancements to the airport local, the airport routes going up, and then some of our Music City circuits going up. The ones that we're seeing declines are a lot of our commuter express are going down. Frankly, it's a combination, at least we think, and based on limited research. When traffic gets much heavier on the interstates, it's not just affecting you driving in, it's affecting you riding in. So we're seeing a number of customers, hey, look, if I'm going to be hung up in traffic, at least I can have, my music and all of that kind of thing. We're also seeing some decline in use, particularly for Vanderbilt and the state of Tennessee in the Easy Ride program. So we're going to be working with Metro Planning in the upcoming year in travel demand management strategies to get those numbers back up, but also expanding the reach of the Easy Ride program. And then we're seeing ridership fall. We're working with Metro Planning to try to pinpoint the relationship of gentrification to ridership. The theory is some of the neighborhoods that are gentrifying the fastest are where we're seeing our largest ridership losses. So in areas of East Nashville, for instance, the Scott bus is down significantly. The Shelby bus is down significantly. So really looking at it as opposed to saying, well, this is a broad thing. It's really kind of a market-by-market piece that we have to address. And then on the service reliability side, kind of related to the interstate question, in fact, Mary Beth and I were just talking about this before the hearing. We're seeing on-time performance almost directly related to how long that bus has to travel through downtown Nashville to get to Music City Central. And we're seeing some relationship of ridership performance to on-time performance, which probably shouldn't be surprising to folks, especially among riders who have a choice to either drive, or travel by transit.
So another question, in the mayor's capital spending plan is $4 million for engineering studies. Should that be, what are these studies, and is that really a capital item?
Excuse me. The bulk of it is for the high-capacity corridors, so the Gallatin Road effort, the other high-capacity corridors, be it light rail or bus rapid transit, as well as overall in-motion program management. And generally speaking, when we apply a capital application, for instance, when we're applying for federal funds, planning and engineering leading to a capital project is considered an eligible expense. Now, and Ed could go into the details much more, but say, for instance, the AMP is a great example of a project where there were planning, environmental impact design fees up front that were capitalized, and when it was decided not to move forward with those projects, they had to be written off, for lack of a better word, out of the capital investment side.
Okay, and then one final, we've discussed in the last year your app, your sort of new technology to guide people quickly, and I know it was a big feature in the mayor's capital spending plan last year. How is that going?
Well, the real-time app is obviously in effect. Fare collection, the ask this year basically finishes off the funding for that system, so we're fully funded for it. It's design and specification, so we expect to be on the street for competitive proposals. I'll say June. I'm hoping the end of May, but I'll be more conservative and say this June we'll be out on that. We expect to have mobile payment enabled probably no later than first quarter next year.
Okay, and all 7.2 million is in a contract for that? How is how much of the 7.2 million is in a contract?
Is in a contract now. Only a small part of it for the design and program management piece.
Okay, I'm sorry. So of the 7.2,
I'm sorry, not the 7.2 for this year. There was an appropriation last year that's under contract. So none of the 7.2 ask is under contract.
But that would all be contracted out to a third-party vendor?
Correct.
So that's your anticipated cost to a third-party vendor?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Weiner.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Bland. I appreciate you being here. Mr. Oliphant, good to see you. I have one question, and I want to go back to the capacity conversation that we had a few minutes ago. I think that it would be important for us as council members to have a sense year over year for the last 2 years of in our districts whether the capacity has increased or decreased, and if so, by how much in either direction. Is that possible?
Sure. Do you mean the capacity or the utilization? We can do either or both.
Let's do both.
Okay.
If you don't mind, that would be great.
It will be somewhat of a proxy measure because obviously routes, we can do it by route, and there might be a route that goes through 3 districts. But
Right. That'd be perfect. Thank you for your help.
Council Lady Mina Johnson. There you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate entertaining my question, even though I'm not on the committee. I would like to start with Council Lady Buckley Allen's question because she had to go to community meeting, so she asked me to ask one specific question to you, and which is in this current budget, the extension of operation hour is included, but I think you touched Bordeaux and Elm Hill will be somewhat hour of extension of the service will be added?
Well, there won't be in our original request, frankly, the direction we were given was how fast can you move N-Motion forward? Was the original conversations we had with Metro. And a lot of people, certainly as Councilman Glover referred to, kind of focus on those big projects like light rail when there are literally dozens, if not 100, specific efforts in N-Motion, like extending service hours and improving frequency. So frankly, we put in a pretty aggressive request in that regard. So the proposal that the mayor has in now wouldn't do an extensive, on a couple of routes there would be a little bit of an hour's extension, but for instance on the airport route, it's adding trips more in the middle of the day to enhance frequencies somewhat, where we're seeing increasing demand in the hotels and some of the other employers along Elm Hill Pike. Similarly in Bordeaux, there wouldn't be, I think on Saturdays, there would be an extension of hours, but weekdays, it wouldn't really run much later. It would run more frequently, though. It would go to every 15-minute service.
Thank you. This is my question. And you touched about the size of the bus, and also in this, here's the cost of the fuel is increased. Do you have any plan, like a new bus, maybe purchasing will be smaller size than existing bus, and then maybe you might be able to save the fuel of the cost in that sense?
There's 2 pieces, and Ed is our fuel savant on staff, so I'm going to defer most of the fuel cost questions to him. One is in all of the new, what I'll call larger equipment that we're purchasing, we are purchasing hybrid electric diesel technology. It's cleaner burning, and in fact, the newer equipment allows us to what's called geofence areas. So for instance, inside the Music City Central Terminal, we can program the bus to only run on battery. When we're sitting in front of Hillsborough High School, we can program the bus to only run on battery. So to do even better spot efficiency improvements in the emissions characteristics. And those buses also come with about a 35%, 40% improvement in fuel economy. So they're more expensive to buy up front, but they do save funds down the road. And then the other thing we're doing with now that we have a lot of technology on board the buses, so we're doing automated passenger counting, vehicle location, and that's helping with real-time information for customers. It's also really helping our data analytics quite a bit. So examining route by route and where can we deploy, even the access ride size vans. So for instance, in the past few months, we kicked off the 77 Thompson Lane Connector service that runs between the 100 Oaks area and out past Murfreesboro and Nolensville as a crosstown route with deviation, and that's being run with, the smaller 14-passenger piece of equipment. So I think you're going to see that more, as we do more of the data and say, okay, when we know that routinely we're not going to get passenger loads, above that 8, 10, 12, 14 level, that you'll be seeing more of those smaller neighborhood context vehicles. And coming back to Councilman Pulley's question, between the smaller vehicles now on the circuit and doing some of that, that's likely the more the impact on the utilization number than really anything else.
Thank you. Sounds like a great plan, and great to hear utilizing the data and changing the model and so forth. And my next question is, seems like the federal grant is anticipating you will be losing. Do you have any plan in the future, maybe we might be able to recoup those grants?
Which one?
1.3 million.
Yeah, that's actually going up.
Oh, it's going
It's
up.
an increase in funds.
Okay, okay. That's great to know.
You scared me for a moment.
So did I. And could you please explain to me about the access rights? Because, you know, when we had a presentation, this is the most cost per capita, but most needed, you know, service. So what 1.6 million will do to this, you know, special service?
Yeah, it's a continuation to expand the service hours, so making greater availability. The other piece is we currently are getting ready to award, probably in June, our board will award a couple of contracts for the implementation of what we call mobility on demand services. And that's a combination. It'll have an impact on what I'll call traditional access ride customers, senior citizens, persons with disabilities. But it's also looking at how we broaden out, how do we use technology to potentially open up that system. So now we routinely have about 80 buses in service on that system in addition to our subcontracted service. As we add more buses to that system, how do we use the capacity we have when it's not needed for a person, say, in a wheelchair, as neighborhood circulation, or the crosstown types of activities, or that first mile, last mile type of activity. So we expect to be able to begin to roll those out, you know, in the upcoming year if this budget's approved.
Thank you. And this is my last question. You touched a very interesting point about gentrification and lost ridership. Mm-hmm. And, you know, of course, we would like to have roll out in motion, and if magically we have 6.8 billion, that would be the solution, but it's not going to happen. So we have to start from one of the high capacity corridor, and I think Madison is the one. But how can we be assured when we have, you know, those high capacity corridor development, especially transit oriented development, and not gentrify and not losing the ridership?
That is the $6 billion question. You know, that how do you make sure that there's mixed use and that you're not displacing neighborhoods? Frankly, Council Lady, I would be lying if I told you I were an expert in that realm. But I think one of the things that, and frankly, it's been a concern of mine going through this, because when we go through, for instance, a federal process, it's going to be an instant question they have in equity analysis. What are you doing to assure that all kinds of people can live along these lines? And the thing I'm encouraged by is the fact that the mayor has made this such a high priority, frankly, has made it not just a priority for the MTA, but it's become a priority for Metro Planning. It's becoming a priority for MDHA, for Metro Public Works. And in fact, one of the pieces of legislation that was passed at the state level this year would allow agencies like MDHA to have special conditions in corridors that are being targeted for high-capacity transit to do economic development activity and housing activity in those corridors. So I think for this council, it's going to be, these have been really hot issues for you all along, and now all of a sudden they're all going to kind of come together in one, you know, one or more big effort. So, but to tell you I know exactly how to do it is, you know, way out of my lane. But there are plenty of people here who can help with that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Did you want to be recognized again? Council Lady Henderson.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Director Bland, you and I have spoken in the past about marketing and communications. So I'm just looking at other services here where you have about $51,000 budgeted to communications. Does that reflect your marketing, or?
Let me see which.
I guess it's component unit funds, other services, communications, $51,000. going up slightly.
Mr. Oliphant is telling me that is a bad description of the number that you're looking at.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, why don't you, can you jump in on that?
Could you speak to how much you put to marketing and what changes you anticipate this year from a staffing and funding standpoint?
One of the things,
within?
we're actually in the process of recruiting a new director of marketing. Our prior director has retired. So that has been a focus. This council, and thank you very much, appointed Hannah Paramore-Breen to our board of directors. And any of you who know Hannah, she is not going to let up on this issue. So I would encourage you to converse with her more specifically. And that one of these specific efforts, or one of the specific initiatives, and it comes out of NMotion, but that we'll be able to pursue if this budget is adopted, is we're calling it a rebranding effort. I'd say it's frankly bigger than that. And I don't mean bigger than it, but it's bigger than whatever a logo or a name. It's getting to the perception issue, things like market segmentation. So marketing, service on Gallatin Road that runs every 10 minutes is different than marketing, the Madison Connector, which is kind of a more neighborhood type of a circulator. So doing much more with market segmentation. Actually developing a social media strategy. We use social media. I won't say that we use it particularly effectively, and that's not a reflection on our folks who do it. They do a good job, but it's not been what I would call strategic. And the specific, now this does not include staff, but the specific funding that is identified in our budget for this upcoming year toward marketing and promotions is about $260,000 when you add up all the line items. Does that include our regular printing, or? No, that doesn't. Okay, does not include things like printing bus schedules and the normal. So that's a broader marketing approach.
Does that reflect an increase from last year, or level, or?
It's a little bit up, but pretty level. It's not a huge amount. To be honest, I think we have adequate resources. It's a matter of how we deploy them, to be frank.
Great, right. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Council Lady Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the budget, I only saw one budgeted position. Is it safe to assume that the other positions are grant funded? And if so, how many employees do you have?
Sure. Yeah, it's an anomaly because MTA employees are actually employees of what's called the Davidson Transit Organization. And that's an anomaly out of the fact of our collective bargaining agreements and how you have to align Tennessee labor law with our federal requirements. But actually, our total staffing, our total authorized staffing MTA-wide right now is about 720 positions. If this budget's approved, that would go up to about 740 positions. Obviously, the dominant job category is bus operator, maintainer, operations supervisor. So that's sort of a profile of what that looks like. Thank you.
Councilman Mendez.
Thanks. If there ends up being a transit referendum in this fiscal year, does MTA anticipate spending any of its funds on that one way or another?
On a campaign?
Right.
No, we would not. In fact, because we receive federal funds, we would absolutely be prohibited from, for lack of a better word, influencing activities, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Unless you mean a broader, now obviously in doing the planning work for the corridors or some of the engineering work that Councilman Cooper had asked about, that obviously would support that effort, but in terms of the actual campaign for a referendum, we would not.
I guess a related question, one way campaign could theoretically play out is some organization that doesn't exist today coming to exist that might do things other than the campaign, just be a central place for information about what the transit corridors might turn out to be. Would you guys be able to contribute to that? Would you want to? I guess you could.
Probably a good parallel. Obviously, it's hard to say without knowing specifically, but a good parallel would be during the course of the Motion process, the Chamber was very aggressive with their Moving Forward initiative. We didn't contribute funds to that initiative, but we made a lot of presentations. We provided a lot of background material, a lot of data supporting the work that they were doing. You know, I would certainly expect that that would be, but it's kind of hard to. What we have to be very careful of is with the federal restrictions on the allocation of funds is what I'll call influencing. We're allowed to educate. We're not allowed to influence, for lack of a better word, if that makes sense.
It does. Thanks a lot.
Seeing no other questions in the queue, that concludes our budget hearings for today. Thank you, Director Bland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.